When you look at income, and I'm talking about both active and passive income, so income from work, income from investments, income from real estate, whatever it happens to be, from MLMs, all that stuff. Do you think there should be a limit? If not, why? And if yes, well, I want to talk about that. Um, we I've been around for 55 years now, and I've observed some disturbing trends, both historically and in my lifetime. That these trends revolve around income levels. So, for example, the people who are the poorest are often looked at as contributing the most to the destruction of the environment, and certainly in terms of like slash and burn of forests, or the way the Brazilians are tearing through the Brazil's forests, rainforests, in search of gold, the strip mining and removal of mountains, and the pools of slag and stuff that they leave behind. That all, some of that is because of poor people. However, if you actually look at the facts, it's not the poor people who have the most significant impact on the environment, because they don't have the money and the resources and the machines and the manpower to have a huge impact on the environment. Yes, they may throw their garbage into the river, the same river that they wash their clothes in, the same river that they wash their dishes in, and the same river that they bathe in and poop and pee in, but that is nothing compared to the volume that a factory can pump into a river in the same time. It is nothing compared to what a company can do in terms of forest devastation, or any other aspect of damaging the environment, because we're talking about economies of scale. You've got one or a small group of poor people versus a giant corporation with huge amounts of reserves and equipment and manpower. So and even if you just look at rich individuals, they by themselves also produce a lot more of an impact on the environment than poor people do. So dollar for dollar, the rich are much more responsible for the problems with the environment than the poor. And if you look from country to country, what you'll see is a repeating story where the majority of rich people get there by cutting corners, by breaking laws whenever they can get away with them, by denying culpability if they get caught, by trying to buy off their victims or the families of the victims. Like in South Korea, there are the chaebols, which are wealth groups. And these are the big companies like Samsung and SK and LG, Hyundai, Korean Air, and so many others, that were set up by the dictatorship that originally pulled Korea out of its slump, in order to, get the economy going. And it did an amazing job. I mean, Samsung by itself is probably the number one single source of economic power in the country, but also they were having people create semiconductor chips in environments where they were directly exposed routinely to chemicals without personal protective equipment like masks and gloves and goggles and hazmat suits and stuff like that. And repeatedly these people would get cancer, and then the company, instead of stepping up and say, gosh, we've got billions of dollars, let's help these people who were working for us, let's save them, let's help them get cancer treatment, let's make sure all of our employees have PPEs, so that they're safe when they're working. They would go to the families of these victims and say, you know what, we don't have money, but here's $1,000. When the family was looking at tens of thousands of dollars at least for the cost of medical care for their child, if the child was even alive anymore. And they would try other tactics. They would try, dismissing their claims as false, and they would publicly lie to, using the media to take any focus off of them and put it back onto the victims and their families. They would say, this had nothing to do with us. They would say that, oh, this guy is just, hysterical, and it's not, and blah, 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 blah. And a lot of people died. And Samsung didn't take responsibility until, like, what was it? In some cases, it took like 15 years before Samsung stepped up and took responsibility, and many of the families of the victims finally received financial restitution, over 90%, and received an apology from Samsung. But here's the truth, and this is, I'm using Samsung as an example, but the truth is this happens in America, this happens in the UK, this happens in many, many countries. These very, very powerful conglomerates that have billions of dollars to play with every single month, they are looking for ways to increase their edge in the marketplace. And so first some of them will first try legitimate ways to increase their marketplace percentage. But sooner or later, many of these companies, not all of them, will start going in the direction of, well, what can we do to skirt the laws? What can if that doesn't give them enough of a profit, well, what can we do to decrease costs? Like, we don't need these PPEs. And I've got to give Amazon credit. I work at Amazon, and they have provided me with work boots. They provided me with masks. They provided me with a non-metallic belt. They provided me with see-through lunch bag, because we have to go through TSA security gates. And they offer other things too, even for somebody like me who's on reduced time. Not to mention what they offer part-timers and full-timers, which includes education and other things for health and stuff that I don't have access to. But a lot of these companies, they will then look at, well, okay, we still aren't at the level we want to be in terms of profits, so what can we do to have the laws altered in our favor? So they will, alone or in a coalition of other companies, will go to politicians and support them financially, either legally through campaign funds or illegally through bribes. And they will get laws passed that make it easier for them. And I've seen this happen so many times in the United States. I mean, Monsanto, there was this giant bill on the health bill that Obama passed for national health care, which I'm so grateful for. I mean, national health care has been responsible for me, because I've been struggling financially since I came back from Indonesia. Has been responsible for saving my eye, for example. I was going to lose my eye because of an infection. It's also been very, very instrumental in helping me in other ways, and also my kids. And so I'm very, very grateful that Obama's administration and that Congress at that time passed it. But at the same time, very frustrated, because what hidden within that bill was a portion that took Monsanto off the hook from all of their culpability. And then, so these laws are created, or they're nullified to help these big corporations. It gives them an unfair competitive advantage. Also, they will go to the courts. They will go to the Environmental Protection Agency, organizations that are supposed to protect workers, like Koreans OSHA or America's OSHA or whatever, and they will convince these people to be on their side. So these people will overlook infractions. They will overlook violations. They will overlook crimes. I mean, if you look at top members of chaebols in South Korea, they were if they were caught, like tax evasion, or the one senior lady from I forget which one it was, but she was on an airplane, and one of the stewardesses served her peanuts in a bag instead of the way she wanted them to be served. So she demanded that the airplane return to the airport and kick the head flight attendant off because of peanuts. That is insane. Now, she did end up going to court, and she was given, I think it was a 3-month prison sentence, but then that was commuted to 2 years of probation. The men who have been caught in being involved in tax evasion have been given several years of imprisonment, but it was immediately commuted, or eventually commuted, to probation. So basically, these people commit crimes, and that's it. And that's the way I remember years ago there was a story where there was this young man who committed a crime. I don't remember if it was rape or what it was, but it was fairly serious. And the judge said, "Oh, he's young. He doesn't have experience in the world. So we're going to just give him this minor slap on the wrist for this major crime that he committed because for him, and he was from a rich family." And there was a big hubbub about that. So what you can see is when people... Oh, and then Jeff Bezos bought a yacht. And he was in Europe. And he couldn't get his yacht to where he wanted it to be, which I think was near his property. So, because there was a hundreds-of-year-old bridge in the way. So he forced, and I don't know if he financially remunerated the city or not, but he forced the city that owned that bridge to dismantle it so he could sail his yacht up the river, and then they could put it back together. Really? Again and again and again. I mean, these people act basically like they're kings and queens. They don't have, they live above the law. And this is because they have such huge sums of money, and I know I'm picking on the U.S. and South Korea, and they deserve it. But you can go to any country. You can go to Saudi Arabia. You can go to Japan, Canada, Mexico. It doesn't matter whether they're legal entities or illegal entities, whether their money is legitimate or if it's from drug running. They do the same thing. They act like they're above the law, and they have an attitude often of, we don't have to play by the same rules. We're special. We're different. And they don't even generally have sympathy for poor people. I mean, who's going to go... Okay, so I'm going to use Yumi Huang. She was she worked very hard in school and then went to university in Seoul and was chosen by Samsung to work in the semiconductor factory that I mentioned earlier. And she got some kind of leukemia, I think it was, and died of it. And somebody from Samsung came to her father. Now he said that his debt at that time from the medical care was like $55,000, and the guy offered him like a few $1,000s and said, "We don't have money, but here, take this," as if that somehow was compensation for crushing medical debt for a guy who was a taxi driver, and on top of that crushing medical debt, having lost his daughter because of Samsung's deliberate malignant negligence, I guess you could say, because they didn't give her proper PPEs to protect her from the chemicals she was being exposed to. Yeah, so that was their attitude, and then later their attitude got worse toward him. I mean, they even made anybody who would protest in front of the Samsung building, they'd take their photograph and they'd make a wanted poster of them. Now, they wouldn't say wanted at the top; they'd say most valuable customer. But then in the text of the poster, it was very derogatory, very negative. Like he was something like that said like he's very hysterical and hot tempered, and it was just making fun of these people. And it's just, it makes me not want. I've wanted to get a Samsung phone for quite some time now, and I feel like I don't want to get a Samsung phone. But then again, Apple does the same thing, LG does the same thing, and all these companies, they just feel like they can railroad us and they can run over us as much as they want to. And now I'm going to focus on sports. So, when I was young, I knew that sports figures would earn large salaries for that time. And then it got to the point where they were starting to give key players $1 million, and now it's tens of millions of dollars. And we've got movie stars who earn tens of millions of dollars, or even more. And we've got social media influencers who are earning huge sums of money as well. But what I see now, they say that money is the root of all evil, but it's not. Okay, and I want to make this very clear. I was raised, basically, maybe not from my parents, but I heard it over and over and over and over again. Money is the root of all evil. How can money be the root of all evil? Money is a tool. Money is inanimate. It doesn't have an intelligence. It doesn't even have the ability to do anything other than just sit there and look pretty or ugly. Like most American money is kind of ugly. I mean, it's got very nice designs, but it's basically it's ugly. And you look at the money from other countries with all these different colors, and it's like, wow. And then you look at older American money, especially, and you're like, really? Look, come on, guys. Let's be creative. Let's be colorful. Let's show the world that we're not just this boring country, that we have creativity. But anyways, I digress. Anyways, so the point is money on its own cannot do anything. It requires human or computer, which is basically human intervention, to do something. And what it can be done what can be done with it is, like, for example, you can pay your medical bills, you can pay your rent, you can buy food, you can bribe somebody, you can hire an assassin, you can pay off a politician to pass a law that helps you, you can buy an entire island, you can buy a country, for God's sake. You can control a government. Okay? So you can use that money to fund super large ships that are full of doctors and nurses that go to poor places and help the people who are not getting any medical care. You can do great good or great evil with money, but money is not the root of all evil. Gold is not the root of all evil. Diamonds are not the root of all evil. It's people. We are the root of all evil. We are also the root of all good. It's in how we decide to use that money. So, and now I look at, my income. My income is the best it's ever been in my life. But I'm limited to working 2 days a week, and I can't get Amazon to let me work more than 2 days a week. But I'm earning more money per hour than I've ever earned, except for in rare instances in Indonesia where technically I was earning more than that. But that was, not a frequent thing, and it usually required a lot of planning and preparation that I didn't get paid for, or was actually part of the cost. So actually, if it's spread out over all the effort that I put into that couple hour presentation, it was actually not very much money at all. But like if you look on the surface of it, I would go and do a 1 hour or 2 hour or 3 hour presentation, and I would get paid maybe $100, $200, and you say, "Oh my God, you got paid $100 for an hour?" Well, no, because I had to prepare the materials. So, it all boils down to a lot less, ultimately, because of the number of hours I had to spend on researching and preparation of the materials and preparation, and that included the presentation materials, both PowerPoint and what would be printed out. So it didn't really end up being a huge amount of money, but it was good, especially in Indonesia. But, so, I'm looking at retirement Never happening, because my Social Security level is like $600 and some a month. I can't retire on $600 and some a month, because I won't be able to get state aid, because once you're on Social Security, you're not going to get state aid, and I'll have to, I won't be able to live where I'm living right now, because right now my rent is over $900. And my kids are going to move out, and $600 isn't going to cover $900 plus insurance for my car, plus gas for my car, plus food and all the other expenses that I will have. It just isn't going to do it. So I'm never going to retire unless I can start earning enough money. And this is, in my case, it isn't even as bad as some other people. I mean, I have neighbors. Both of them work for Burger King, and their boss, the owner, is a jerk. But that's beside the point. The point is that both of them work there, and I do volunteer work at food pantries, and I bring them food on a regular basis because they're struggling, and their rent just went up too. So, you've got people around the world who are working, and they're always fearful, and they're always stressed. They're worried they're going to lose their job. They're worried that they're going to lose their place of living, their vehicle, and so on and so forth. Some people can't afford to fix the car because they've got to pay for the rent. The car's breaking down, but they don't have the money for it because they don't earn enough, or maybe it's just because we are constantly being bombarded by these big companies with marketing that messes with our heads, and food that addicts us and stuff like that, so that we can't properly manage our money. And we're not taught really in school how to properly manage our money. How to, when I was a kid, I was in home economics. Yeah, we learned a little bit about budgeting. We learned about balancing a checkbook. But what they didn't teach me really was the right way to handle my money, which I had to learn on my own. It was like, put your bills first, and then save save like 10 to 20% at least. And then the rest you can do with what you want. You can save it, you can spend it, but make sure you always got money every month. And that means for me, I hardly ever go to restaurants. I never go to movie theaters, because why would I pay $12 for a movie? It's ridiculous. It's insane. And most movies aren't even worth it, because they're just retreads of old movies. Sometimes they're really just an old movie and they just redid it. And I don't do a lot of things. I don't have that kind of extra money, because I need to save up, because I'm never going to be able to retire. And God forbid, and something should happen to me medically. And right now, something is happening to me medically. I've got atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, or plaque buildup in my, in the arteries around my heart. So yeah, it's this is serious, and there are lots of people who are worse off than me, and the rich people are like, well, let's see what we can do to get more money. Let's see what we can do to increase our profits. And it's always, well, I'm sorry, I should not say always. Blanket statements are never fair. It's almost always at the expense of the 95% or the 99% even. Or, and it's insane. I mean, we're talking about people who get per year millions or billions of dollars. They don't need. Okay? If you're sitting on $20 billion, why do you need that much money? You don't. And corporations can increase their profits as much as they want, legally or illegally, in order to give more to themselves and their golden parachutes for the top executives and for the investors. But there's no culpability. They're not held accountable for their actions. They're given slaps on the wrists. I mean, HSBC was caught, doing bad things with, financially, and America said, oh, you know what, you're such a big bank, even though HSBC isn't one of the biggest banks in America, you're such a big bank, we can't possibly, do to you what we should do to you, so there you go, bad boy, and you're too big to fail. So we've got companies now that are too big to fail. They should have broken HSBC up. Kept it open, but broken it up into different companies and said, if you look, most companies out there that are famous companies are owned by a small number of parent companies. Just take a look. that the strategy of diversification has become a strategy of control. So you get these gigantic corporations, these multinational corporations, and science fiction writers have been warning about this for a very long time now, and it's been going on for a very long time now, that the multinational companies are becoming more powerful than financially and legally than entire governments. I mean, Korea's government is basically controlled by these multinationals and these national companies that are the big portion of the GDP. So, yeah, in my personal opinion, I believe there should be a cap on income. And I'm not saying, people can't earn $1 million or whatever, and I'm not saying how much, but I don't believe anybody needs or should be allowed to possess billions of dollars. I think it's ridiculous. And then you pass it on to your kids, and your kids didn't earn it. Well, why do they deserve it? Shouldn't they be required to prove that they deserve it? Especially if they prove that they don't deserve it? I mean, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm being unreasonable, but when you raise up your kids to have an elitist attitude, you don't deserve that money, and your kids don't deserve that money, and their kids don't deserve that money. Nobody should be teaching their kids that, well, we're better. Our poop doesn't stink, like everybody else's. It smells of lilacs or whatever. And they don't have that money because they're not willing to work hard. Well, you know what? If you look at companies, who's the backbone of the company? The CEO? The marketing team? Or the people who are actually doing the work? The customer service team? The technical support team? And when I say customer service, I mean both in person and on the phone and in email and voice chat or video chat. Sorry, as and technical support, same, and retailers and the laborers. Like me, I'm a laborer, and those are the people who really earn you your money. Because without them, without all of us little peons, your company cannot run. And yet you treat us like dirt, and you pay us the minimum that you can get away with. Last year I worked at a company. It was called Derringer Food Service. And they were so stingy. Even though they were desperate for employees, they didn't want to pay their new employees or old employees more than about $13. Or maybe it was $13.50. And they were also doing some shenanigans as well. But it was crap money for and the work wasn't really that hard. We did have to remember a variety of different rules about the different kinds of foods and beverages that we were dealing with and pay attention to things, but it wasn't particularly difficult, but we were always understaffed. We were always being forced to work overtime because they were not willing to, they could not find people to stay. I mean, people would come in and within a couple of weeks they'd be gone. So a couple of days, sometimes one day, they'd be gone. And I'm not just talking about temps, I'm talking about people who were actually hired to work there. And then we'd get somebody come in and they would stay, but they were lazy and they would lie and they would do things wrong. And nobody was doing anything about it. And finally, I'd say something to the director, and I was like, look, this is happening, and but still I'm just using Derringer Food Service as an example because they sold out and they were bought by a bigger company, which I won't name. Unfortunately, the bigger company kept my boss and my boss's boss, who were both liars and broke promises to me, and I left the company. But the truth here is that I understand, and I would like to earn more money, And I understand why people get so desperate that they turn to crime. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. I mean, they look at all these rich people, legally rich people, who have broken the law over and over again, and they're like, well, gee, if they can break the law, well, why can't I? You know, and some of these rich people, they engage in really heinous crimes and get away with it. So, but still, you know, I can't do that. I can't set aside my morals to do the things I know I could do in order to earn the kind of money that I would like to have. And I see social media influencers doing that very thing. I mean, they defraud people of millions of dollars. They set up these crappy NFTs that they claim are custom made when they're actually just stock photo stuff. They set up cryptocurrencies that they claim are backed by X number of dollars, and then they run with the money. And do stuff like that to people over and over again, and they get away with it. And I just don't understand. Unfortunately, there are YouTubers out there that try to expose these people, but still, there are a lot of victims, and some of the victims are so emotionally and financially invested in these criminals that they won't accept it, and they'll allow the criminal to defraud them again and again and some of them never can separate themselves from that person because they're too invested in that person and hoping that the money's going to be returned. They're just like, well, God, I put $10,000 into these NFTs and cryptocurrencies from Paul Logan, and oh my God, and his brother, and if I back out now, I might never get my money back. So I'm just going to stay, and I'm going to get, and when they ask for more money, I'm going to give them more money because sooner or later I'm going to get my money back. And then the next thing you know, they're leaving the country, fleeing jurisdiction because the FBI's after them, or the SEC's after them, or the police are after them. I just really feel that if money can be used to buy politicians, to buy laws, like ALEC, that's an organization that puts corporations and lawmakers together, and they just make laws that are created to support the corporations that are members, and then the member corporations give campaign money to the lawmakers, and then the lawmakers go to Congress and they make laws that they use those laws created by ALEC and get them, if they can, get them passed in Congress, so these companies have an unfair advantage. I mean, Harley Davidson did that. They killed Indian motorcycles by doing things like that. So I just feel like if there's a cap at some point, and the problem with capping would have to be, this would have to be something that would be basically across the board, as in most countries, or every country would need to agree to this, because the countries that don't agree to this are the ones that are going to, their companies are going to end up just taking over the position of the ones that are currently in control. But these multinational, I'm looking for solutions. If you are just going to write and say, you know what, Glenn, you're stupid, we can't cap income, I don't want to hear that. That doesn't help. For example, one thing I would say is hire people based on their merit, not on the fact that they're politicians. I don't think hiring professional politicians is wise, because they only support and continue the same broken system. They don't create a better system. And so I believe a meritocracy, with citizens always being taught to keep your eyes on the politicians, the meritocratic politicians, to make sure they're doing their job right, and that the educational system be improved instead of being dumbed down. I mean, because I look at the quality of education my kids are getting, and I'm really grateful for the resources online, because what the education that they're getting right now is not up to par. It's not as good as when I went to school. And this has been a problem for a very long time. The dumbing down of America is what it's been called, and it happens in a lot of countries. There was one point where Texas wanted to improve the quality of education, and business owners, or maybe it was just a city in Texas, or I'm not sure if it was the whole city or a state or just a city, but business owners got together and said, no, you can't do this. They pressured the government to back off on that because they were afraid they were going to lose their labor pool if the citizens got better education. So they wanted and got the lawmakers to reverse their decision to keep these people trapped in a labor position. How many of you, when you went to school, were taught about entrepreneurship in a significant way? How many of you were taught how to invest money in a way that is both practical and relatively safe? How many of you got information that would really financially benefit you and make our country or our world a better place? So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for suggestions, really. What can we do to resolve these problems of corporations and rich people corrupting and twisting the system to support them and their quest for greater amounts of power and wealth? What can we do? Because, you say cryptocurrency. No, cryptocurrency is just the same as currency, but there's less, you can't track it, so it's easier for criminals to abuse than regular money. Because with regular money, you have to use money laundering, which can be tracked through records. Cryptocurrency hides all of that. So you could earn billions of dollars and nobody will have an idea of where that money came from, unless you're making the mistake of doing it through websites that keep track of things, and if you're very careless about how you do it, shifting money around, and all this stuff that's going on is just, what do you think we should do? I really want to hear your input. Please be intelligent. Please be kind. Please be patient and try to understand other viewpoints. Do not insult each other or me, because I'll just report you and I'll block you, and I'll never hear from you again, and that'll be fine, because I don't like trolls. I don't need people coming on here and being emotional. I want this to be an intelligent conversation, not just people yelling at each other. Not that at all. Don't yell. Talk politely. Have respect for each other. I realize that our politicians don't give us that example, and Will Smith slapping Chris Rock was not a good example of how to behave. It was a poor example of how to behave. And now I understand. Jada, his wife, Jada is going through cancer. My wife died of cancer. I can totally understand how the stress of what Will is going through with Jada is so intense that hearing Chris make a joke about his wife put him over the edge. I get that, but it doesn't justify it. Okay, and so let's do this the right way. Okay. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see wonderful comments and suggestions from all of you. Have a great day.